This video presents a mock trial examining the landmark Supreme Court case, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, from 1992. We focus on the initial decision by the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania in 1990, which addressed the constitutional challenge to the 1988 and 1989 Pennsylvania Abortion Control Acts. The challenged Pennsylvania amendments included a 24-hour waiting period for informed consent, parental consent for minors, and spousal notification for married women, alongside reporting requirements. Plaintiffs, led by Planned Parenthood, argued the law violated the Due Process Clause by placing an undue burden on a woman's right to a pre-viability abortion established in Roe v. Wade. They cited spousal notification and the waiting period as creating substantial obstacles. The defendant, Pennsylvania, maintained the law was a permissible regulation promoting informed choice, marital integrity, and minor welfare. They argued the regulations did not impose an undue burden. Next, we examine the specific arguments and witnesses presented by the plaintiffs, Planned Parenthood, during the initial trial. Dr. David A. Grimes, a leading epidemiologist, testified that the 24-hour waiting period increased medical risk by causing delays and that the mandated information was medically inaccurate. Dr. Grimes also testified that spousal notification risked direct harm, referencing data on domestic violence. An anonymous plaintiff, Mary Doe, shared how spousal notification risked violence from her husband. She also highlighted how the 24-hour wait posed a prohibitive financial and logistical burden. Mary Doe's testimony demonstrated the real-world impact of the law, suggesting she might resort to dangerous measures to avoid notifying her abusive spouse. We now turn to the arguments and witnesses presented on behalf of the defendant, the state of Pennsylvania, in defense of the challenged law. The state's witnesses supported the legitimate interest in fetal life and argued that the waiting period did not increase health risks, but was helpful for reflection. Dr. John F. Thorpe, Jr., an OB/GYN, testified that the 24-hour waiting period provided a cooling-off time for thoughtful decision-making and that spousal notification promoted marital communication. Dr. Thorpe also asserted that the definition of a medical emergency in the Act was clear and workable for physicians. A state official testified that reporting requirements ensured compliance and data collection. They also claimed the spousal notification would not be proactively enforced, minimizing risk. During rebuttals, the plaintiffs countered the state's claims. Experts argued that the waiting period was medically unsafe and that the laws imposed costs rather than provided necessary counsel. The district court, applying the undue burden standard, ruled that most provisions were unconstitutional. It struck down the spousal notification, the 24-hour wait, and the reporting rules. Parental consent was upheld. This ruling was important because it was the first major federal court to adopt the undue burden standard and established a factual record that the Supreme Court would later rely upon in 1992. Key elements of the challenged act included informed consent with a 24-hour waiting period, mandated spousal notification, minor consent laws, and detailed clinic reporting requirements. The trial court found 5 provisions unconstitutional, ruling that both spousal notification and the 24-hour waiting period constituted an undue burden. Pennsylvania immediately appealed the district court's ruling, moving the case to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, a critical step toward the eventual Supreme Court review. The Third Circuit Court of Appeals largely reversed the district court, upholding the 24-hour waiting period and parental consent. Only the spousal notification provision was struck down. The case finally reached the Supreme Court in 1992. SCOTUS affirmed the core right to abortion from Roe v. Wade, but adopted the, quote, undue burden standard for evaluating regulations. The impact of Casey was the establishment of the undue burden standard as the new legal test. Regulations are permissible unless they create a substantial obstacle to the abortion right. The undue burden standard replaced the strict scrutiny test. It allows regulations that inform a woman's choice, but not those that significantly impede it. The undue burden standard determines if a regulation creates a substantial obstacle. If it does, it is unconstitutional. However, states can enact regulations that inform choice. Thank you for watching this video on Planned Parenthood versus Casey.